Communicators often get confused with marketers, but both have different roles, different goals, and different KPIs. Hi, I'm Olivia. This is Martin, and we're joining you from Invoke. So, we keep seeing this misconception and this implication in our conversations with customers. So, we thought today we would deep dive into the difference between both a marketer and a communicator and why the needs of each are different. So, Martin, do you want to kick us off with your definition of each?
Well, Invoke is an email tool, so we sort of look at it through the lens of that kind of communication when you're sending out messages, and what's the purpose of that. The big difference, of course, is and one of our customers put it very well, which is that marketers sell, communicators tell. The primary objective for a marketer when they're doing anything, or email communication in particular, is they're trying to drive leads and sales. And so that's where their focus is. That's where their KPIs are. Whereas communicators, and when I say communicators, I'm talking about communication professionals at post-secondary institutions when they're communicating with students and staff, municipalities, communicating with their city residents, regulators. All of these types of organizations and many other kinds are, they're just not trying to sell anything. And so in some ways, a marketer has a very straightforward KPI: is how many leads, how much sales did I generate? And communicators don't have that. So this is a really important distinction right there, that the goals are so different, and it just has a lot of implications when you get into it.
I think the interesting part is that most communicators, when they're looking for an email platform, they're not even searching like email communications platform. They often end up searching for email marketing platforms. So I don't know that there's a lot of discussion around specific tools that exist for their use cases.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, we know this from search activity. When most people, when they're looking for an email tool, they do a search that includes the term email marketing, and marketing in quotes. I think most are not aware that's just the name of the category. I think some communicators, or non-marketers that need to do broadcast email, are surprised even that there is a tool that exists that's specifically for their needs. I think the frustration that communicators are dealing with is, again, because an email marketing tool is built to generate leads and sales, and they are not trying to generate leads and sales, then a lot of the functionality and the tools and the reports are just not made for them, and they feel like they're contorting themselves to fit into an environment that is just not suitable. There's just a lot of complexity introduced that's unnecessary, that you're always trying to sort of wade through different functions that are just not relevant.
That's great. Thank you so much. Let's chat a little bit around the three different types of messaging, because I'm not sure that our audience would be familiar with this, but I think it's important to know and how each of those types of messaging impact people in communications roles.
I'd say initially when we started developing and really focusing on communicators, we ourselves didn't have a clear understanding of the different message types. But as we've learned and listened to the customers, we've come down to really three kinds of messages. They're either opt-in messages, which are the most similar to marketing messages, even although they might not be, what a communicator is sending them, they may not be trying to generate, well, they're typically not trying to generate a sales or a lead, but it's a type of communication that the recipient can choose to opt out of. So that's the bulk of the messages that are sent even by communicators. The second kind of message is internal. So this is where they need all of the ability to track messages, the level of engagement, and create beautiful messages for an internal audience, but they don't want to necessarily put an unsubscribe link on the bottom, because for an internal message, it's not relevant, for example. And then the third type would be mandatory messaging. And this is one where communicators often aren't even aware they need this, or that this is possible. And this is where I mean, a regulator is a perfect example, but it can be relevant for any kind of communicator. But if we use a regulator, there are certain messages that regulators send out. In the case of regulators, sometimes the majority of messages that the recipients can't just click and say, I just don't want to get this anymore. By virtue of being subject to a regulator, those messages have to be received, and they need to be managed very differently than normal. So opt-in, internal messaging, and mandatory messaging are the three kinds of messages that we see that the communicators need. And typically marketers only need opt-in.
I did want to ask, a lot of questions that we get are around how mandatory messaging is even made possible with Invoke. So if you want to address that, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I like getting that question. How the one way somebody put it is, how do you get away with this? Because it seems like it's contradicting CASL or CAN-SPAM or GDPR rules. And the way it works is that you're operating on your own set of rules. So you can only use mandatory messaging if you've got a contract or a regulation that allows it. So, for example, if we think about a university, when a student joins a university, there's a contract. People maybe don't think of it this way, but there is a contract. You sign up. It's kind of a terms of service. And embedded in there will be, as a member of the university or some words to this effect, you are required to receive certain messages. So easy examples would be, all right, there's going to be a change in your program schedule, or a class has been canceled, or anything like that, where the university really needs to be able to send those messages. And they're not sending it under a CASL regulation. What they're sending it under is their contract. And so it's perfectly legitimate for those messages to be mandatory. And then the primary difference between the unsubscribe, which is the unsubscribe mechanism, is that in an opt-in message, you can go to a preferences page, you can select the content you are providing consent to receive or not, and you are instantly unsubscribed. Whereas with mandatory content, you're really submitting a request, and that request needs to be vetted internally by the organization, and the request might be legitimate. They're no longer a student, for example, or illegitimate. The student says, I just don't want to get these messages anymore, and the organization can respond, appropriately.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. You can learn more about Invoke at www.invoke.com. We're going to publish more videos on our YouTube channel and LinkedIn as well, so feel free to follow us if you want to tune into more content. If you're a communicator, we do also have a free 30-day trial on our website, so you can go in, play around with the platform, see how it's working for you. All right, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye.